task force to try to evaluate the risk at a geothermal venture and do what we can to mitigate that risk, to help the people in the community as much as we can. It is in that latter job that I'd like to talk to you today. We have quenched 10 of 11 wells, and we are currently pumping fluid to plug the last well as we speak. Should have an idea of whether that's successful or not tonight. Once that step is taken, we will be in a much more solid state for having lava overflow the site. This is important because I think, as all of you know, lava is starting to intrude on the southern edge of the Puna Geothermal Venture site. It's not easy to predict where it's going to go and when it's going to get there. So it's important that we get what we can done now and continue on. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
We just left a viewpoint in Leilani Estates. It appears that there's a major fountaining event, seemingly no more than maybe a couple hundred meters from PGV.
I'm not sure if it's how many meters it is, but yes, that fountaining event has been going on. I've visited it 3 or 4 times, and it continues. I think you can verify this with people would know more of it later, but I think that fountaining event is the fissure that is producing most of the lava that's going to the ocean.
For those that may not be familiar with the term, can you explain what quenching the wells means?
Quenching the wells means filling them full of cold water so that the weight of the cold water sitting in the pipe, the long pipe, is sufficient that instead of hot water entering the bottom of the well, cold water exits the bottom of the well. Now, one thing I need to make very clear that last time I talked I did not, and that's that these wells have been shut in since this event started. What that means is on top of the well there's 2 very big valves that are shut and have trapped whatever is below that and there's no way for that to get out unless there's a breach in mechanical integrity. So that was the first step. Shut them in, be sure that that what's below is not going to come out. The second step is fill a well full of cold water so that the pressure in the well is greater than the pressure coming out of the well is greater than the pressure going in. And the third step is to plug the wells. If we're basically completing the second step, and if time permits, we'll start the third step.
What kind of material would you use to plug the well with?
There's several things that have been proposed to plug the well. Well can be plugged with special types of mud that get very hot when they're when they are heated up, get very, very stiff and hard, and can plug the well. You can plug the well with a plug, an iron plug, and there are probably many others. I'm not a drilling engineer, so I won't go much further into that. There's one more thing that it's important to say, and that's that the way this team has worked is there's about 6 of us or 7 of us on the team, and behind that team are the workers at PGV who have to go out and do all the things that the team decides has to be done. And those workers have worked very hard, very effectively. We're essentially all part of one team, and we're working to make that as good as we can.
What's the weight of the water that has been sent down some of these wells? I mean, going 6,000 feet, you have a 20-inch bore. You have an idea on that?
It doesn't matter what the bore is, it matters what the height is, and
Okay.
there's a conversion factor that's basically about a half a pound per foot.
Okay.
And that's not right, but it's the one I remember, and it's close. So essentially the pressure at the bottom of the well would be the number of feet deep it is divided by 2.
To follow up on that, the pressure valves you have at the top of the well, what are they rated to for like PSI resistance?
They're 1500. They're 1500 series steel, as I understand it. And I know this from hearsay. They're tested, and this is again me talking to people. I haven't reviewed the test documents. They're tested to over 3,000 pounds, and probably would be good to about 5,000 pounds. Now, having said that, that testing is done with metal at certain temperatures, and if you put tremendous heat on any metal, it changes how much pressure and stress that metal can hold. That's why having lava flow across a well causes some uncertainties that have to be dealt with.
And I take it when you say 3,000 to 5,000 pounds, you're talking about per square inch.
Yes.
Okay.
And then for the plugs, do you have that material on site already, or is it on its way, or for whatever kind of plug you decided to use?
The plugs will be on site tomorrow morning. I'm not sure if they're in Kona right now or if they're being flown into Kona right now, but they're going to be brought over from the west side by tomorrow morning. So we'll have the plugs on site tomorrow morning.
Would that be iron? Do you intend to use iron plugs? Is that right?
Yeah, they're metal plugs. They are made of, there are quite a number of materials in them, some of which is iron. But it's a metal plug. There's other things in it. They have materials that on the edge of the plug allow it to seat more firmly inside the pipe. So there's other materials, but essentially they're metal plugs.
And so you put water down both the injection wells and the production wells. Is that right?
Oh, don't have to put water down wells that are already at zero pressure or at a vacuum on the surface. That means they're already running in. So we essentially have put water down 4 wells at this point in order to reduce pressure. There's a 5th well that we put water down just to cool off the resource underneath.
As you guys have done your research for this, is there precedent for lava overruns at other geothermal facilities around the world?
I have researched this, and again, I'm not going to overstate my knowledge. I have found no case in which lava has overrun a well that has been shut down like these have been. There's been lava. We talked to scientists in Iceland. They have operated with wells that have been in lava fields, and they had some insights, but the circumstances were different. Essentially, what has to be decided is how different kinds of lava flow are going to put different kinds of stress on the wellhead, and try to estimate the amount of temperature effect that if the lava goes on the wellhead, what the high temperatures would do to the behavior of the metal of the well and the wellhead.
If there were an uncontrolled release, what would the risk be to the community? Just if you can explain sort of what might go wrong.
Well, we've had one uncontrolled risk at Puna Geothermal Venture, and so probably the best way to answer the question is say what happened during the blowout at KS8. Now, interesting, that's near a full blowout. It lasted 31 hours. But if we were going to talk about what happens if a wellhead got sheared off, the consequences of something like that would be probably far less than KS8. And the reason is because there would be impediments to flow out of the well. On KS8, you had an open hole to the ground. If you have impediments down well, or where the cracks or whatever occur at the top of the well would occur, those impediments would reduce the flow significantly. So there's a lot of things that would mitigate from a KS8 type. From a planning purpose, looking at KS8 would provide a good baseline to be sure that you're considering the things that need to be considered.
Just to be clear, so the risk is uncontrolled release of fluids and
Well,
gases
there's a steam release. There's many chemicals, but primarily the critical factor would be hydrogen sulfide, a very deadly gas.
And then there was some mention of some difficulties at one well. Can you explain that in terms of plugging it or putting the fluid in?
Yes, what has happened on the surface, and you can go out there and see that the world on the surface has changed because of volcanic activity. That's happening underneath as well. And so when we started dealing with the wells, they didn't all behave as they had 2 weeks before. We had to look at each well and deal with it. Essentially, the well is KS14 is the one you're talking about, and KS14 seems to have access to a great amount of heat, more heat than it had when it was serving as a production well 2 or 3 weeks ago, before this event occurred.
Is that one closer to the existing flow on the property?
I don't know the answer to that, so I'm not going to speculate.
And what did that do to your process as you try to inject fluids into it?
What happens is we put cold fluids in it, and we were unable to get pressure to 0, and that meant that it was still heating up at the bottom to a degree. We put salt water in it, which is heavier, which should allow us to increase the pressure at the bottom. The salt water was of insufficient density to cause the well to shut off, and so now we are using mud materials that are used in drilling industry to plug the well while under pressure.
So essentially, your water was boiling back at you,
Yeah.
being converted into steam. And
Yeah,
back out.
there's some more complications that I'm not going to go into because you guys would probably go to sleep. But yes, there were a lot of things happening down in that well that were different than what we thought they would be.
Anybody injured in the process?
Oh no, there's been no one injured, and in fact, safety of the workers is important. And over about a day and a half, we've had to suspend work because of high SO2 concentrations. So no, safety of the workers is right at the top for when we're working there, just like when we do any emergency management.
Are your workers working with masks? Gas masks?
They have personal protective equipment available. When the winds are blowing like they are today, the air out there is actually nice. I've been out there for several hours in the last, and there's absolutely no need for use of any personal protective equipment.
As of the last report I heard, the lava encroaching onto the property was about, say, 200 to 300 meters away from anything that was considered developed on there, and there was a berm stopping it. Is that still the case at this point?
Yes, it hasn't moved, and but I'm going to let Dr. Jim tell you about all that stuff. I think he knows more about lava flow than I do.